Chapter 21. And first of all, we start off with an excerpt from Dr. Serizawa's notebook. Osiris asks, "My face shall look upon the face of Otum, but how long will I live there?" Otum replies, "It is decreed that you will live for millions and millions of years. Then I shall destroy everything I created when I brought the world up from Nu. I shall return everything there is to the watery abyss." And that is from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, spell 175, 1550 BCE. And in brackets it says, Otum was said to have created the world at Jebel Bakal. His symbol was that of a lizard. Madison ran. That quiet moment on the roof, looking out over the abandoned city, seemed an eternity ago. Boston was now a fully active war zone in a battle between the gods. Everything around her was burning. Bricks and steel rained from the sky. Even running as fast as she could, Maddie still hadn't managed to get out of the combat zone. The Titans were just too big. She felt like an ant trying to get out from underfoot of a couple of men wrestling. If she ran at 100 feet, they could cover that distance in a single step. They didn't even notice her anymore, but that didn't matter. The missiles and jet fighters didn't know she was there either. All of those fireworks they were shooting at Monster Zero were made of metal and fire, and they were coming down all around her. One of Monster Zero's tails sliced through a skyscraper, ripping through its steel-beam skeleton, as if it were paper, spraying out tons of debris towards her. She desperately dodged her way through it, falling, rolling, springing back to her feet. Every direction seemed closed off, and the fight was about to roll right over her again. A roar from something that was not a monster drew her gaze to the sky. The big monarch flying wing, the Argo, shot by, spattering Monster Zero with missiles and heavy weapons fire, driving him away from her. That seemed like a good thing, but the panic was really taking hold of her now. Too many near misses. Her luck was not going to hold out. Any second now, she would be in the same place as a ton of falling steel. She kept remembering Andrew and how he looked when they found him. She needed to be safe, to find somewhere safe. Fighting for breath, trembling, she ran on. Ghidorah crackled with energy, charging up for another volley of gilt lightning. Missiles spread past the Offspray, their warheads opening on Ghidorah like flowers. The three-headed giant flinched back, and Godzilla slammed full on onto him. Lightning flashed as Ghidorah staggered, but instead of hitting Godzilla, the bolts went wild, branching into the sky. 3 bolts became 1,000 fractal streams of energy. One line of lightning crackled by the Offspray, so close Mark felt the heat and smelt the burnt air, but they were spared being struck. Half a dozen aircraft weren't so lucky. Energy arced through and between them, electrocuting the pilots and frying their engines, so they hurled, burning into the city below. "Hang on!" Griffin yelled, banking hard to avoid the flaming remains of an Apache attack helicopter. Blood rushed to Mark's head, and his belly did somersaults. The Offspray was almost on its side, so the window he was next to was facing the flaming city below. Griffin got them clear and rightened the vessel, bringing them back around to a view of the fight as Godzilla impaled Ghidorah's tails with his dorsal spines. All 3 heads shrieked in pain. Griffin circled the Offspray around the fight, dropping towards what was left of the stadium. "Prepare for landing," Barnes said. "Check it out," Martinez said, still watching Godzilla. "Dude's lit up like a Christmas tree." Through the smoke, Mark saw what Martinez meant. Godzilla was pulsing with a fiery orange light, the air around him distorted by heat waves. This was new. Nothing like this had been observed during the big lizard's last trek across the globe. "Stanton, you guys seeing this?" Mark said over the radio. "Oh, we're seeing this," Stanton said, "but definitely not liking it." Stanton paused. Mark could almost see him going over the readings, calibrating the data flow. The Osprey dropped lower. They were almost on the ground. Stanton studied his instruments while Sam glared nervously from him to the strange light radiating from their friendly Titan. "Godzilla's radiation levels are going through the roof," Stanton informed him. "We've got about 12 minutes before he goes thermonuclear." "What do you mean?" Foster asked. "I mean, in about 12 minutes, it's gonna be a bad day to be a Red Sox fan." "Guys," said Sam's voice on the radio, "you need to find the Orca, grab Madison, and get the hell out of there. Whatever Serizawa did to Godzilla worked a little too well, because he's about to explode like an atom bomb." Barnes looked around, the Boston skyline burning, jets and choppers flaming out, and two monsters straight out of the apocalypse were going at it hard and bloody. "Roger that," Barnes answered, prepared for landing. As the Osprey dropped down, Martinez crossed himself. Barnes closed his eyes. Others, men and women Mark didn't even know the names of, were steeling themselves in one way or another, preparing to die if that's what was coming. Looking at the chaos around them, it seemed a fair bet that some or all of them would. Mark felt a lump gather in his throat, and a profound gratitude. Like Serizawa, these people were ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. The Osprey bumped down onto the field at Fenway Park, and the soldiers surged out. Golden lightning struck, and the first two out the door were incinerated, their lives cut short in less than a heartbeat. It was horrifying, but the others piled out anyway, and he was right behind them. Fenway Park was almost unrecognizable. The once huge left field wall, the Green Monster, had been obliterated, and much of the stadium itself torn to shreds. Mark stared up through the broadcast booth, or at least where it should have been. That's where Emma and Maddie would have been, right? Patched into the sound system. Ghidorah had figured that out too. He leapt out of the Osprey, nearly twisting his ankle on the rubble that covered the diamond. Smoke stung his lungs. "Maddie!" he shouted. "Madison!" No one answered. Nothing moved in the line of sight, except for G-Team. He didn't see anyone else, living or dead. They fanned out to search. Godzilla and Ghidorah were just getting started, lightning jagged all around them, along with a flaming meteor storm of dead aircraft. The air stank of burning jet fuel. He began fearing finding his daughter almost as much as he feared not finding her, because to find her like Andrew would be unbearable. "She's not here," Mark thought. "She was never here. Emma came by herself. She left Maddie someplace safe." But he had to know, so he couldn't stop looking. Because if she wasn't here, he didn't know where to look for her. The Monarch bunker maybe, but another chopper had been dispatched to check that out. "Over here!" Martinez shouted. Mark rushed to the sergeant's side, fearing the worst, trying to prepare himself. But what Martinez had discovered wasn't Maddie or Emma. It was the Orca, and it wasn't in very good shape. It lay inches beyond the edge of a debris field, crushed into the contours of an enormous foot. He picked it up, studying it. The link to his family, maybe Emma had just hooked it up at the stadium and taken off. But then why was it down here, and not in the smoking hole that had been the broadcast booth? On closer inspection, he saw the machine was banged up and singed, but maybe not beyond repair. The ground rumbled, and the gas stream suddenly surged up from beneath them. Godzilla and Ghidorah still rumbling. "We gotta go," Barnes yelled. The monsters were coming back their way. Two of the commandos grabbed Mark and hustled him towards the Osprey, but before they had gone no more than a few steps, one of Ghidorah's feet stomped down on the aircraft. The Osprey exploded, sending them all reeling back and adding to the massive flames already surrounding them. Godzilla reared up and blasted Ghidorah with his atomic breath, knocking the dragon back towards them. But then a new light burst down from above, a familiar blue radiance. He saw broad, oval wings sweep back, the orangish eye markings towards the end. Mothra's sonic boom rumbled across the ruined field as she drove into Ghidorah like a hawk, diving down onto a snake. This was as close as Mark had been to the giant insect. As her name suggested, she was a bit moth-like, but a lot better armed than most moths he had seen. Her back legs were bent like a grasshopper's, and her two front sets of limbs were long, deadly, and clawed, like the forelimbs of a praying mantis. But those weren't her only weapons. A long, wicked sting projected from the tip of her thorax. Webbing jetted from her jaws, arresting Ghidorah's fall and sticking all three heads to a skyscraper. One of the heads ripped free and began tearing at the webbing, but then Godzilla was there, plowing into Ghidorah, knocking him clean through the building. Mothra swooped in for the kill. Rodan burst from the clouds like a flaming avatar of some ancient, vengeful god. He spread straight for Mothra, his half-molten wings folded back, striking her like a meteor and tearing her from her flight path. He wrapped her in the furnace of his wings. Mothra shrilled in agony as the soft down on her body caught fire. She struggled to escape his grasp, tearing at him with her claws as the two of them went soaring past. And Mark and G-Team were alone on the field. What was left of them, still reeling. Mark took a head count. Barnes and Martinez were okay. Griffin looked hurt. The rest of the team was just gone. He didn't have a lot of hope that they would fare any better. Gas mains beneath the stadium had ignited. Flame and steam jetted from the ground, as if the rain of debris wasn't enough. Barnes and Martinez helped Griffin to her feet. Well, they weren't flying out. They would have to walk. But where? The stadium was now an inferno, columns of flame licking the sky. Any direction they went would end with them as torches. But they had to do something. Find a weak place in the wall to fire, run through it fast. And then something did burst through the flames from the other side. A Humvee with Emma at the wheel. "Get in," she said. No one moved. Barnes and the others exchanged suspicious glances. Mark didn't blame them. She'd caused all of this, and now she wanted to help? Just then, a fighter jet crashed right behind them. That ended their hesitation in an instant. All of them jumped into the vehicle, Mark included. It no longer seemed like a time to be picky. Mark took shotgun, still not sure this was all happening. It seemed completely unreal, like maybe something had smacked him in the head, and this was all a coma dream. But dream or reality, he had some questions. "Where's Madison?" was the first and most important. Emma's brow came down. "I don't know," she said. "I thought she was there." She swerved sharply to avoid the chunk of aircraft that had just crashed in front of them. "Well, she's not there," Mark said. "Hopefully you're as good at finding her as you are losing her." "I didn't lose her," Emma said. "She ran away." "Gee, I wonder why." "Oh, don't start," Emma said. "Don't start," he said. "You tried to kill me." "Can't blame that kid," Mark heard Barnes say. "If I had these two for parents, I'd run away from home too." Emma slammed on the brakes. "What did you say?" she demanded. "I said, if I had the two of you for parents, I'd run away from home too." Emma looked at Mark. "Home," they both said at once. Emma stepped on the gas. Maddie couldn't stop crying, and every minute her panic threatened to strangle off her reason. Something had given way inside of her. Nothing lasts, she thought, as her feet slipped the pavement and her heart pounded in her ears. Nothing, not Mum and Dad, not Andrew, not me. Not Boston. Everything's going away. Boston had always been her happy place, the quiet point in her memory, where everything had been good, where they had played bocce on the common, making up their own rules as they went along, where her favorite climbing tree had been, her backyard jungle, the sushi place around the corner Andrew always wanted to go to, where he tricked her into eating wasabi by telling her it was green frosting. The zoo, the museums, the boats on the harbor, the library where she had checked out her first book. That place only existed in her imagination now. Looking back on it, the damage had begun when they returned from San Francisco. The fights between Mom and Dad leaving, but it was still their home, a place that he might come back to. Those bad feelings could have been mended with better ones. But now, as she fled along Beacon Street, monsters were literally tearing it all down. She felt brave when she started all of this, determined, but now it was all too much. Too much death, anger, fear, betrayal. Too many monsters. She had to make it home. In her core, she knew if she could only reach their old house on Beacon Street, she would be safe, despite everything. The house was still there. Miraculously, in the midst of chaos and hell, the townhouse where they had lived, just on the edge of the common. She paused outside, panting, no longer quite sure of her logic. It was just a house, right? Something huge crashed on the common just yards away, an inferno with something withering within it. Wings thrashing, claws long, intersecting legs, not Godzilla or Monster Zero. Her mind couldn't sort it out. She didn't want to look anymore. She ran inside the house, slammed the door, and put her back up against it. She slid down on the floor as the house began to shake. She covered her ears, drew her knees up to her elbows, and screamed as she realized that this place was no safer than anywhere else. It was just a straw house surrounded by very big bad wolves. Across the room, old family photos rattled on the shelves. That family in those pictures, she understood now, like Boston, those people existed only in her memory. It looked to Sam like they were winning. Between their missiles and a supercharged Godzilla, and Ghidorah not being able to heal as fast as he was being wounded, he looked to be trying to fight free and escape again, but Godzilla stayed one step ahead of him. Their losses were unthinkable. The fleet, all those pilots and sailors, Dr. Graham, Serizawa, all sacrificed themselves to bring them to this moment. There were other titans out there, but with Godzilla in charge instead of Ghidorah, well, if things didn't get better, maybe they would at least not get worse. Mothra and Rodan were still battling it out, locked together. The winged titans crashed into a bridge. It crumpled on impact, and fire splashed everywhere like napalm, setting ablaze everything it touched, including Boston Common. Oh no, he thought. Mothra sprung up, found perch on Rodan's back, and slashed her claws deep into him. Rodan screeched and leapt into the air, slamming his wings down, so both of them careened through a skyscraper and vanished from sight. Flame exploded inside the building and began rapidly climbing, floor by floor, toward the sky. Not that far away, Godzilla was still slaughtering Ghidorah, even without Mothra's help. He slammed his opponent with his tail, sent him rearing into a building. Ghidorah flapped frenetically and managed to get a few yards off the ground before Godzilla snapped his jaws shut on one vast wing, twisting his head so as to throw the dragon to the ground, sending a ringed shockwave carrying debris and smoke for hundreds of yards through the burning city. That's gotta hurt, Sam thought. Come on, finish the bastard off. Godzilla seemed to have the same thought. He roared, and from his open mouth, the blue beam of his atomic breath pressed Ghidorah's back, shrieking in pain. All the while, Godzilla pulsed brighter and brighter. Ghidorah's golden glow had dimmed to a sickly, intermittent yellow. The big lizard fell upon Ghidorah, hammering him. Ghidorah on the ropes was just trying to escape. One of his heads snaked out, struggling away from its torment, as if it somehow thought it could separate from the common body, strike out on its own. Maybe it could, if Ghidorah could regrow a head. But that's not what the dragon had in mind. Sam saw the real target just before Ghidorah's wayward head got there. Damaged high-tension lines, showering sparks down into the street. Ghidorah gaped wide and bit down on the wires. Despite the damage downtown, most of Boston and its suburbs still had power. Now every light, for as far as Sam could see, strobed, going dark, lighting back up, dimming again, as the power grid struggled to deal with a sudden, massive drain on the system. Ghidorah blazed back to full charge in an instant. The golden lightning gathered in him and blasted from all three heads, knocking Godzilla off the ground, hurling him hundreds of feet to the harbor, where he crashed into a shipyard.